What's up, YouTube? This is your host, Kiyan Sobani. I put together a compilation of sorts from the Valencia post-game podcast, which went up for free on Saturday night. And what I put together here is part one is kind of like this Asensio performance rating and also figuring out his player comp, what kind of player profile he actually is, why he struggles to be consistent, and basically transition to a lot of Luka Modric swooning, Toni Kroos' performance, and a lot more. And then part two of this little compilation, posed an interesting question. Where does Vinicius rank among the most entertaining Real Madrid players in the past 30 years or so? So like players we turn on the TV and we're just super excited to watch. Every time they get the ball, there's a spark. We're on the edge of our seat. Like where does Vinicius rank in the past 30 years or so? So we also talked about that. The full podcast, it's linked. It's for free. You can check it out. Subscribe to Manage Madrid on your podcast app. We go really deep, about an hour and a half analysis from the Valencia post game. We talk big picture, everything. And super excited to just invite you guys to something on Wednesday night. So for the Super Copa Clasico in Saudi Arabia, we're doing a post game show live on Zoom video. So you get an actual link and you join us. We're doing live video breakdown. We can't video breakdown that we can't even post on YouTube because La Liga will be on our ass with copyright infringement. So only people who will be on Zoom at that time will be able to see that. And you'll be able to join in the chat discussion. You'll also be able to ask us questions at the end, join the actual video. And that's only for patrons. So patrons get an exclusive link. And fear not, don't be daunted by becoming a patron. It's only $3 a month. And right now we have an annual membership deal. So if you sign up for patreon.com/managingmadrid, and you get an annual membership, you pay for 10 months, you get 12 months. So you get 2 months free. That'll take you all the way to 2023. So that deal is up until Wednesday, I believe, at the latest. So make sure you take advantage of that. And super excited to see you guys on Wednesday. And again, $3 a month. If you guys like this YouTube channel, you like the podcast, just do it. Consider the $3 you put towards a bag of chips, towards a cup of coffee from Starbucks. You get a ton more value by putting that money aside. It goes to a good cause. It's a Real Madrid family. We do this for a living. This is how we feed our families. This is how we grow the podcast. It allows us to put this content out for you guys. So if you like the cause, you like the channels, consider supporting over on patreon.com/managingmadrid. $3 is the minimum to get in. So $30 gets you the annual membership. But if you don't want to put $30 up front, no worries. You can just pay by month, $3, and you can cancel anytime. Of course, if you pledge more, you get different rewards. But $3 is all it takes to get in. And we really look forward to seeing you inside and having some of these parties with you guys on Zoom and just giving you guys a ton of bonus content per week that you just don't get on YouTube. So see you guys inside and enjoy tonight's clips. Asensio, Modric, Vinicius, main talking points. Here you go. Enjoy.
So I guess this takes me into once again talking about who I see Asensio is as a player, and I just think there has been a lot of confusion over who he is, what he's good at, what are his most important traits in terms of actually making impact on winning football matches. And I think Asensio has kind of felt that confusion himself. And that kind of plays into it a little bit. In the sense that more and more I watch this guy, you think about his best performances. They're all about him running into space, running in behind. Today, it was all about attacking the channel. All the best moments from him in the first half was coming from him running into the channel, causing danger because he's really quick off the mark. He has good top end pace, and he actually has a really good eye for attacking in behind. Right? But because he's Spanish, because he has a silky first touch, because, he has a dribble on him for a long time, and maybe still everyone kind of looks at him like he has to be this advanced playmaker, a number 10 type, which just I've never really seen him put in a dominant performance between the lines, just dictating things from that position, creating tons of chances, filtering through balls. That's just not him, even though kind of as a secondary and tertiary skill, he can do that. It's about what he can do in space. And so in this type of game, right, Mallorca was the complete extreme where literally they were just begging Asensio to run in behind. He ended up scoring the hat trick. Today it wasn't quite like that, but the channels were wide open for reasons we discussed. And Asensio was just spotting that the entire time and getting in behind. And My feeling with him is I think he needs to realize like this is how he most regularly makes his best impact. And I think he just needs to lean into that and become that player and really lean into the things that are actually high impact skills and traits for him, as opposed to trying to be the player that other people want him to be. That's part of it. The other thing is like, yeah, he's good running in behind, but can Asensio game to game against elite teams be like a top level threat just by doing that? No, and I think that's the answer, right? Like it maybe partly has to do with confusion over his role, about Asensio not knowing what exactly to lean into, but also like it's not like we're talking about Erling Haaland and Kylian Mbappe going in behind, right? Like there's a limit to how effective it is. What I think we've seen with Asensio this season is he's gone back to being like a very useful player, and in certain contexts he can be very, very good, right? And I just enjoyed what I saw from him a lot, and I'm content with having this Asensio because I've recalibrated my expectations for what he is as a player.
Same.
And if he can try to make an impact this way, right, and not become someone who is dropping off to the ball all the time, playing like lateral passes, not really affecting blocks that much, maybe we can get this slightly more consistently. But the ceiling of this isn't going to be crazy, crazy high, which I'm fine with. And yeah, ultimately I agree. Like I've been very regular saying that Rodrigo should be a starter, but I have no qualms with Asensio starting this game. I think he absolutely deserved it based on the way he performed, and he was great. I have more things to say about how Modric was enhancing what Asensio was doing, but I guess we'll get to that. And I don't know if you guys have anything you want to respond to in regards to what I said about Asensio.
Well, to me, he's like, just it's interesting that you were talking about like, what kind of player is he actually, and like the confusion, and maybe he's confused as well. I was mentioning this, I think it was Matt, that like, and I wrote about this a few days ago, that like he's not like someone who's a reliable dribbler who's going to take players on like a Vinicius, obviously. He's almost like let's say if you put Odegaard on the wing compared to him, like compare those two skill sets. Neither are the type of players who will take players on the wing. Odegaard is a better passer, playmaker, and a progressive passer. Or Asensio is a better shooter, slightly better dribbler, and in a different context as well. To me, like Asensio is almost like a Mahrez light, a Riyad Mahrez light. He kind of has like a similar profile. Like he's not going to be the most elite dribbler, but he can dribble. But he's going to be more of a playmaker from that role, and he's not as good or reliable as a consistent playmaker like a Mahrez is. But I think Asensio, I think you bring up a good point, Om. Like in terms of what our expectations are now, it's no longer that budding superstar that we thought he was going to be in 2017. He's just a rotational bench player who can give you production, and I'm fine with that. So just based on that, I'm okay with it. I'll live with maybe some of the inconsistencies. But again, I feel weird talking about him this way after such a good game. I don't mean to take away from that and start to be negative about this. But I know that he has potential to play like this, and I think that's part of the frustration, is that I want to see more of it. And the Modric enhancement, Modric and Vasquez tried their best against Getafe too. And we were trying to pick out some of the positives against Getafe. Modric was really the only one we could come away with. A distant second was Vasquez, who at least tried to provide something on the right. They were there against Getafe, at least trying. Asensio had zero intent, zero visibility on the ball. He just wasn't around. And I noticed from the very first minute in this game against Valencia, when Valencia were congested on that right side in the first minute, Asensio came over and overloaded that side and provided Alba with a ball over the top as an outlet. And basically from that moment, he was just engaged, fully locked in, moving off the ball constantly, really making Modric's life easier as well with those runs in the half space. So I don't know, Matt, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but But today he was really good.
I just think, especially I don't think like the psychological impact of confidence and just being confident. Like we know how important that is to players. And I think today you saw a confident Asensio. You saw what a confident Asensio can do. And so you're saying, yeah, I want to see that more. I want to see him do this consistently. I 100% agree. And I think the frustration with Asensio is because we see performances like this, and then the next three performances are nowhere near this level. And so now it's up to him to keep this confidence going, to keep this run going. It seems like he's now edged out Rodrigo on the right wing. I mean, just 2-3 weeks ago, I was saying Rodrigo was definitely the starter on the right wing. So they're having this back and forth duel. But for now, he's got it. So he's got to continue to show that he's the guy there. And I think to your point earlier, like he's doing things that he's kind of playing to his strengths rather than trying to be something he's not. And I think, Keon, you made the comparison to Mahrez. Like, I think the one major difference with Mahrez, though, is Mahrez is a guy that will get isolated 1v1 on the wing with a fullback and like look to do some step overs and take a player on.
Yes.
And Asensio's really not that guy. And I think he's starting to recognize that now, and instead is using his off-ball movement, is kind of playing just not as much. Like I think a lot of our frustration was always him playing like safer passes, either just lateral or backwards. I think he's playing a little bit more vertical now, but even then, if he cuts inside, he's either taking a shot or playing the long switch to Vinicius. And so I think he's improved in the final third and is just making better decisions overall. So now, I mean, like we said, it's in his hands. He's got this position for now. He's got to prove that he can use this confidence, take these good games, and make it one after the other, get that consistency, because that's always been the mark against Asensio.
Yeah, I mean, and just being engaged. I mean, there was even a sequence in the second half where he comes in for a flying. Actually, it wasn't the first half. Flying challenge on the wing in the 23rd minute, where he's sprinting over to the wing and winning the ball. It's all about being locked in and engaged. And sometimes he has it, sometimes he doesn't. There was another theme I think you were hinting at earlier. I don't know where you were going with it, but feel free to take over from that train of thought.
I mean, I was gonna go into Modric.
Yeah, it's related. It's connected. Same side.
Yeah, I think Modric was just brilliant in that first half. Like, I don't know what he was on this game, but it just looked like he was like playing this like it was a Champions League final. Like the level of mental intensity that was occurring, like the level
you okay?
of mental intensity.
Yeah, take a minute there to compose yourself from that Modric monologue.
Take a breather, home. Take a breather.
It's okay. Take your time, buddy. Take your time. It's gonna be.
My audio is something weird is happening there, but anyway, so the mental intensity that he was showing was like, it was, I don't know if shocking is the right word. I mean, we expect professional footballers to come out completely focused every single game, but he looked like he so badly wanted this win, right? Like when his shot went off the bar, like his reaction was a level of frustration you normally don't see from him. He was just locked in with every single movement he was making. And this was real blast to the past Modric in terms of his level of off-ball activity on offense was just nonstop. And I think an underrated thing is that's like slowly declined with him over time because of age. And to maintain that motor, it's a really difficult thing to do when you're like, I don't even remember how old he is at this point. Was he like 45 or something? Like the fact that he just turned it up the way he did in that half, it just took me aback because every single time I looked at the possession and looked at where everyone was, he was in a different place. And every time he was in a different place, it was enhancing what we were doing, right? He was just constantly positioning himself in a way that would facilitate circulation through the right areas, get Asensio played into the half space, create space for Lucas. Anytime Asensio dropped off, Modric would instantly move into the half space himself to threaten the channel. Like, the reason everything good was happening down that right-hand side was because Modric was just floating everywhere and being hyper aware of how to position himself to create a tactical advantage for the team in terms of our ability to circulate the ball securely, penetrate the defense, play in behind him. He has these like blast to the past performances from time to time. And I don't know, I'd say like this is the best one I've seen like over the past couple seasons, but this just felt like the most surprising one for whatever reason, right? It's Valencia in 9th place. They don't look particularly good on the day. I have the feeling that we're eventually going to break them down. And he just kept going for 45 minutes like this was like he had to win or his like child would die or something, you know, but I dig it. It was really, really excellent. And yeah, I don't know if we fully understand like the mental and physical toll it takes to be going 150% off ball, constantly reorganizing the shape and offering yourself in beneficial ways. To just do that for so long at his age, it's not even something like a young player can do at that level, at that intensity. And he's just a remarkable footballer, the way he's been able to maintain his body and be able to turn it up in moments like this. I think he's kind of figured that out, like how to save himself when he needs to go for it. I'm just surprised he went for it today, but I'm glad he did, because any one of us could go back and just like do a full analysis on that Modric first half performance, just point out all the subtle things he did that made our right flank look so good.
I think the subtle. Sorry, Matt. I think like just like the subtle, the subtle things he does is a good way of putting it. Like it's hard for us. Like we can sit here and describe all the stuff he does and the importance in the ball progression, the importance of him helping the team win the ball back, you know, just winning the ball off of midfielders. Like there was one in the first half where I forget who he was going up against, but he just bullies him off the ball, wins it, and then does an outside of the boot diagonal pass to Benzema. But I think like even it's just a lot of the stuff is just, you got to just watch it and can't be described, because he has the rare ability where it's not only that he's effective, but he also has the other stuff that can't be measured, and that's just beauty and that's just grace. And it's like the stuff that makes football, like the craft, the art, everything. It's awesome to watch, and it goes beyond stats and numbers. It's just fun. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, and it's almost encapsulated in the moment where he hit the crossbar with his left foot, because he creates space for himself just by being patient and just by taking a few touches. And like, he's one of the few players in the world that are just so good at doing that. And he slows down time. His understanding of time and space is just a class and a level above everyone else. And I think the question now is, it's crazy, but like, how long can he keep doing this? I'm not ever going to put a number on it, because he could be 40 and still doing that crazy Croatian with his super, I don't know if you guys seen his legs. His calves are like almost the size of Roberto Carlos's. And I don't know. This guy he's a freak athlete. And I think it's fair to say that he's a freak athlete. He doesn't get credit for that, but he is. And I don't know. I don't know how long he can keep this going, but we always say, oh, we need someone to replace Modric, or we got to rest Modric, but it just simply isn't true for the last few years.
I think the reason it's so difficult to describe these types of performance is it's entirely contextual, right? Everything in football is contextual, but when someone scores a goal or does an amazing Vinicius skill, like, it's so tangible and you immediately understand why that's important, right? You cannot understand for the majority of Modric's touches why he was doing what he was doing and why that was important without describing everything that was happening around him. And in like an audio medium, to do that on a podcast is incredibly tough, because to sit here and be like, well, this defender was positioned here, and then the way he suddenly, like, it's just so hard. And even to do it in writing, it's difficult. Like, probably the only way is to just sit down with the video, watch it 100 times, Like, look at all the small things that are happening and then like break it down bit by bit. It's that type of performance. But I think the way you describe it is like stepping back and saying like it's like the contextual effects, right? And Modric, when he's on song, there are very few midfielders in the history of football that have greater contextual effects than him, in the sense of reorganizing the defense, creating like abstract things like structural and tactical superiority. His movement and touches were just always putting us in a superior position to be able to attack goal in a dangerous way, is I think the best way I can put it on a podcast.
Well, on that, and like the age thing, that's got to be like the one of the hardest things to juggle if you're like in the upper management level, and you have like, let's say, you're the guy who's making the sporting decisions, whether you're the coach or whether you're a sporting director, or you're the CEO or the president. And we all know at Real Madrid it's kind of like a collective that kind of they make these decisions together. That's got to be one of the hardest things to juggle. Like when you have players like Benzema and Modric who are outliers and they're performing at this level, like what do you do with that? Do you just assume that in the next year or two they have to drop off because history tells us that players are supposed to age eventually? There's like, how do you it's just impossible to predict because you have a Marcelo and then you have a Modric and then you have, even Ramos, who aged so well. Like I know, like now we can talk about like his injuries and stuff and whatever. He's older, but he aged incredibly well, way more than better than Hierro did, for example. Like that's got to be one of the toughest things to juggle. Like I always like had a rule like after the age of like 33, 34, and Bale was like, when I checked that the whole Bale news this week about him wanting to retire at the end of the season, I don't know why I always thought Bale was older, but he's only 32. And then you have like someone who ages like Bale, right? It's got to be really difficult to juggle stuff like that, because my rule has always been you just got to be really careful like phasing these legends out. You don't want to keep them too long for a variety of reasons, and history backs this up. But then you have outliers like this. It's really hard to juggle players like this. Like, what do you do with these players? We had a whole Twitter space discussion about Haaland to replace Benzema eventually. I'm like, okay, when is the timeline on that? Because I don't know when that timeline is. How are we going to sit here and say Benzema's done in 2 years? I don't know if I have the balls to make that claim.
So I think it is difficult for all the reasons you're saying, but I think Modric makes it easy on us. Like, I mean, I don't sit inside his mind, but based on what we've seen over the past 3 years, you get the sense that like Modric is okay with no longer being an indisputable starter, right? Like he hasn't thrown a fuss. Like he was open about like wanting to like transition Kovacic to the role before Kovacic left because he didn't have patience, who's doing really well at Chelsea right now, by the way. Given that, I think Real Madrid is like trying to approach it this way, is you just keep signing him to like 1-year contract extensions if he's okay with that, and sign the player. Like if we see like a really fantastic option that we're like, we got to have this guy and he's going to compete with Modric, then just sign him and let them compete. And if that guy can't beat out Modric, then like, man, it sucks for you, but this is Real Madrid. And if Modric can't beat him out, I don't think there's going to be a problem. So I think that's the logical way to approach it. And in a sense, I think because of the way Modric has approached his like post-peak career, it makes it a lot easier on us than like it maybe should have any right to, because I don't know how many other midfielders we could say is arguably the greatest central midfielder in Real Madrid history, like ignoring whatever position Di Stefano was, and like not necessarily be concerned about him losing minutes and like the issues that would cause in the dressing room. So I think you like have to be careful about not dismissing the idea of Modric sustaining this level for a couple more years, maybe several. But in terms of like, should this stop us from going out and get a target? Like, I don't think so. I think you sign that player. If Modric keeps playing well on a season, you sign him to an extra season. And when inevitably he falls off, I don't think it'll be an issue to just bench him. Like we went through an entire season where we won the league where Fede Valverde was the number one central midfielder spot, and we didn't hear a peep about any problems.
Yeah, my only counter to that is when Modric came out, I guess it was last year, and said, I play better and I like it better when I play match after match after match. I don't like being rotated. And I think he continually keeps making a point after, because people keep bringing, I think journalists keep bringing it up to him, like about his age. And he just says, look, age doesn't matter. It's about the performance on the field. And so I think he started to make more of a point that, yes, maybe he said in the past, like he would take that role with Kovacic and everything, but you're going to have to you're going to have to be a hell of a player
absolutely.
to claw that away from him. And
no, absolutely. Yeah.
And if I mean, the other problem though is like if we get targets, let's say we do get a target, like let's say we get a Barella or something, and he plays in that position, but Modric is playing better than him and gets all the starts, well then Barella's not going to want to stay. So it's just the problem that you run into.
Yeah, but one thing for sure is I mean, you're going to have to claw it away from Modric, and we'll have to factor that in. But I think Modric will probably respect if you claw it away from him. I think Modric is very resistant to the idea that he just naturally gives way when he's playing at the level he is, which I completely understand. I mean, it is a bit of a concern that you sign a player, maybe we spend a lot of money on him, they come in with expectations that they have a certain role, and it turns out Modric is better than him. But I don't know if there's any way around that. I think that's just the inevitable difficulty, and that's as easy as it gets, right? It's not going to be totally easy. But from a Real Madrid context, I think this is much easier than many of the other situations we may be seeing in the past. Modric does not seem to me to be a player who would just perpetually block out any signings and be unrotatable. I think it's a question of, does the player who's coming in understand that they have to claw the spot for Modric, and can they do it? To me, that's the question, right? Jovic came in, and I'm sure he had expectations about what was going to happen. He probably saw Benzema's age, and he's like, this isn't going to last for long. And look at him now, and he's gone through a mentality shift where he doesn't want to be transferred in the winter window because he sees this as his chance to fight for Real Madrid. I just think that's the reality of playing for Real Madrid, and that's just a challenge that occurs everywhere. Taking that into account, I do think we have a simpler situation than something like Haaland coming in and trying to figure that out with Benzema.
Yeah, I don't, and there's no right or wrong answer. I think it's a case-to-case basis. I do think the correct way to deal with these contracts is if they're performing at a crazy level, an outlier level after the age of 32, then probably the correct way to do it is to convince them of one-year contracts over and over and over again until they just basically can't, their legs don't work anymore. But I think Matt brings up a good counter. Are you going to miss out on Haaland to do that? And Haaland's obviously too good to be on the bench regardless. But let's say if you want the Modric successor, basically, how can you even blame Kovacic at this point for leaving years ago when we're his time will come, and his time wouldn't have come even if he stayed. He would have just been off the bench and whatever. And he's a really good player. It's a hard one to juggle. I thought I would also just point you guys' direction to low key, I thought, because I don't he didn't have necessarily the standout game that Modric had. But low key, Kroos was, I thought, great tonight. I mean, you look at his numbers. 99 passes attempted, 95% passing accuracy, 12 of 14 long balls, which is pretty routine for him. 3 key passes, most touches of anyone in the field, and it's not even close. I think he had 30 more touches than Mendy, who was second. Just highly influential.
So I'm interested to know what you guys think, because you're the ones that have watched Real Madrid over a much larger period of time than me, so it's a more interesting question for you guys. But I tweeted out that Marcelo has been the most entertaining player, obviously very subjective, but in my opinion, the most entertaining player of my time as a Madridista, so since 2009-ish. The answer is Marcelo, but I feel like Vinicius is just taking over with the things I see him do every game. I don't even understand what I'm seeing. It's just I'm on drugs and I'm enjoying it. where would you guys rank Vinicius in terms of entertainment for you personally among all the players you've seen, right? I mean, we've had Zidane. It's not like Ronaldo. CR7 wasn't entertaining in his prime. Like, we have OG Ronaldo. Where does Vinicius rank for you? Like, he's got to be pretty close to the top, but would you say, like, he could be possibly number one?
Go for it, Matt.
So I mean, it's so hard because like I think this comes into like personal bias, but number one for me
Beckham?
still is Marcelo. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I was just gonna joke that you were gonna choose Beckham.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, but number one for me is still Marcelo. Like some of the things he did, there were so many games where your jaw just dropped, and he was in the biggest of games too, like Champions League semifinals against Bayern Munich and stuff like that, and it was just unbelievable. And he would pull skills out that just nobody else could do. And I think Vinicius is on a similar trajectory, but for me, he's not there yet. And maybe with time, he will get there and surpass Marcelo. But for me, Marcelo's number one. Other players that come to mind, just quickly, like again, this is like a totally different type of player, but Guti, like I just loved watching Guti on his best days, and like he was just so fun to watch, and just entertainment value was through the roof. And it's not necessarily on a dribbler kind of level, but just a different type of player. I don't know. I mean, honestly, I know people give him flack, but I thought he was really good for Real Madrid. Robinho, another one of the Brazilians, he was a lot of fun to watch, but I still rate what Vinicius is doing right now higher than that.
I even when Robinho was at his best for Real Madrid, I have more confidence in Vinicius now than I did in Robinho then. Like I feel like with Vinicius now, you just see you have more confidence in him dribbling past the markers. With Robinho, was kind of hit or miss. I don't think Robinho is as good as Vinicius. Even like with the hype he had back then, I still think Vinicius is just the more entertaining and more grounded and overall better player. In terms of entertainment value, like the three, if I had to make like a short list, and I think all these three players are ahead of Vinicius, to me, Figo was still breathtaking to watch on his day. Like just the energy and like electricity when he would get the ball on the right wing. You just knew he was going to just cook whoever was going to stand in his path. And like he could dribble past anyone. And I'm obviously talking about like the peak, not like after 2003 he wasn't the same, but like his first two seasons at Real Madrid, especially that first season, it was incredible to watch. I'll never forget. That probably is like number one to me, and number two would be Zidane. Number three is like one player we've covered in the past on these historical segments, and that's Michael Laudrup, who was electrifying and just so fun to watch. I think Vinicius, like, I want to give him a few more years. I like at this level, just to like see, because like, yeah, another player we didn't mention, but like to me is maybe not up there with Marcelo in terms of entertainment value, but Roberto Carlos was super fun to watch. Like because he could do things that no one else on the field could do. Like a lot of the times, like I remember when we played against Manchester United in 2000 at Old Trafford, I just remember the commentators in the English media just being like in awe of what they were seeing, because he's like such a physical specimen where like he's just like the strongest human on the field. His legs are tree trunks, and he's just doing all these step overs and shooting from distance and doing all these like that thing. I don't know what you call it, I guess, but Ronaldo did it a lot where he would get the ball on the left and then just kind of it's almost like a back flick cut in to the middle. Roberto Carlos was like the pioneer of that move. So I don't know. I'd put Vinicius like maybe. I mean, the other one we didn't really mention yet is Modric, but I think that's like almost like a given, right? Modric was, if we're going to mention Guti, we have to mention Modric. Raul wasn't flashy, but I super enjoyed his chip shots and his chip goals. But I suppose like Vinicius is like. Do you guys remember watching Robin much? I even don't think I was as confident watching Robin dribble past people as I was with Vinicius. Robin like became really terrifying at Bayern, but I didn't feel like he really hit that level with us because of the injuries. But Vinicius, I think, is just much more enjoyable to watch than even Robin was with us.
I think Robin was as devastating as like we remember at Bayern, but he just got injured so much, so that you rarely got to it just was so inconsistent because he would only last 2 games and then he was injured for another 4 months. But I just remember thinking every single time he got the ball, there was no stopping him.
Almost this.
Keon goes on about me and my rants. All I asked was like, where does Vinicius rank in terms of entertainment? And then Keon gave us the entire history of Real Madrid and who was good, who was effective. Keon just laid into it. I guess it was a good question.
Well, we all know that all you wanted to hear was for us to be like, yeah, Vinicius is the greatest player of all time and was the most entertaining athlete ever
Actually,
to walk
I think number
the earth.
one is Jovic.
This is from the guy who gets mad on Twitter now if you say Vinicius didn't play good for 5 minutes. He'll just come and screenshot that and reply to everything you say after that. Keon's the real Vinicius fanboy now. Said Vinicius was better than Asensio. I don't think he's criticized Vinicius on this podcast the last 15 times. I'm actually the balanced one.
I mean, there's only one person on this podcast that has 10 Twitter burner accounts.